Today we're talking about the Varrios Los Aztecas, also known for being an extremely dangerous Hispanic street gang. They are violent and proud, psychotic, and heavily involved in gun running, street violence, and also have traditionally been anti-narcotics. They have been in a long-term gang feud with the Los Santos Vagos, as well as rivalries with all other street gangs in Los Santos. They also dislike the San Fierro Rifa. The Aztecas are known for wearing turquoise bandanas showing off their affiliation to the Aztecas. Their graffiti is orange and can be seen around El Corona. The Varrios Los Aztecas have been around since the early 1980s and are one of the more recently formed gangs in Los Santos. Much of their origins and past history is unknown. Likewise, the origins and past of their rivalry with the other Los Santos gangs, particularly the Los Santos Vagos, is also unknown, though it obviously began sometime between 1980 and 1992. It is highly likely that they evolved from the El Corona neighborhood, and their presence grew with the increase of Mexican and other Hispanic and Latino immigration to the area, correlating with the relative deprivation of the area compared to the rest of the city. A lowrider competition took place in El Corona, and Cesar Villalpando himself was there, and a Grove Street family's OG known as CJ. Fortunately, the Aztecas do not harass or fight CJ. Instead, they let him take part in the bouncing competition against an Azteca member. CJ wins the competition without any violence taking place, and then Cesar Villalpando introduced himself as the boyfriend of CJ's sister Kindle. CJ makes his objection to the relationship clear, and an influential, possibly an OG Azteca member called Jose approaches CJ and confronts and insults him for his rudeness. Fortunately, Cesar is able to influence Jose to cool down, thus causing him to leave and possibly saving CJ's life. From this point on, Cesar and CJ start to develop a close friendship, though the gang violence between the Aztecas and Grove Street families doesn't decrease. It is likely that the Aztecas have no involvement with Crash like the other three Los Santos gangs. This is because the Aztecas was never seen during a train heist, whereas the other three gangs were tipped off by Crash about the train. This is odd since the Aztecas are heavily involved in arms dealing and gun running. Either Crash are scared of the Aztecas due to them being possibly the most heavily armed gang in Los Santos, or they avoid them because they mistakenly think they are weak due to their small size. Another possibility for this is because Crash does not want to make the Varrios Los Aztecas too powerful over the other gangs by equipping them with even more weapons due to them already being heavily armed. Crash reveals this mentality to CJ during a meeting between them. Crash stated, "If one tribe gets an unfair advantage over another, that truly troubles me, Carl." However, the Aztecas lose all of their territory and influence to the Vagos, including El Corona, Unity Station, and Little Mexico. The remaining Aztecas are killed or in hiding while Cesar is far away from Los Santos aiding CJ and Kendall. Upon the return of CJ, Cesar and the Aztecas regain back their territory from the Vagos in a gang war amid city-wide riots with the help of CJ and some Grove Street family members. Cesar introduces the other three known as Azteca OGs, Gal, Sonny, and Hazer. This is the only known situation where the families and the Aztecas join together, briefly to take down the Vagos. Now this is what we know about the Varrios Los Aztecas. The Varrios Los Aztecas are an extremely proud Mexican or Latino street gang, and they control El Corona, Little Mexico, and Unity Station. They are the smallest gang in the city, but are likely to be one of the most heavily armed, giving them power over the other gangs. They are a traditionally anti-narcotic gang like the Grove Street families, with heavy involvement in gun running and arms trafficking, gang banging, gang warfare, street violence, gang-related homicide, murder, vandalism, and illegal street racing. They are easily identifiable by their turquoise-colored bandanas and 90s Colo style clothing. The Aztecas have a fierce rivalry with the Los Santos Vagos, and strongly dislike the San Fierro Rifa. They also have many conflicts with the nearby Balas, especially the front yard set, since their territories border near Idlewood. The Aztecas are also enemies with the Grove Street families and will attack Grove members on sight, though the rivalry is not as intense as it is with the Balas and especially the Vagos, since the families are well away from their territory, and since they both share similar views on drug trafficking. Aztecas will more commonly question CJ about his gang-banging status rather than directly shoot him on sight like the Balas would. If CJ chooses to bang his set, CJ will announce he is from Grove Street and the Aztecas will attack him. Aztecas members will be hostile to CJ only if he walks on their territory. If he drives a car through their turf, they will just stand on the street and won't even chase him or shoot at his car. This indicates that the Aztecas and GSF have a lighter rivalry, as opposed to the Balas and Vagos, whom the GSF are archenemies with. Despite the rivalry between the Aztecas and the families, two prominent OGs bond a close friendship: Carl Johnson from Grove Street and Cesar Villalpando from Varrio Los Aztecas, due to Cesar dating Carl's sister Kindle, though this is much to the dismay of Grove Street leader Sweet, whom quotes in the beginning, "You know we beefing." In relation to the rivalry between the two gangs, the friendship of Carl and Cesar is further fueled when they eventually leave behind the gang-banging lifestyle. Hence, despite the fact that Cesar is friends with CJ, this gang will still confront and or attack CJ if he walks on their turf. Unity Station acts as a front for the gang and is a common meeting place, as well as being the place where their lowrider competition takes place. Varrio Los Aztecas members are mostly dressed in the 90s Mexican gangster-style clothing of the time, and they wear turquoise bandanas around their heads showing that they're affiliated, and they will often mark their territory with orange graffiti. Members are found hanging around and talking in groups while smoking marijuana and drinking malt liquor. Upon spotting a Bala, Grove, and especially a Vago or rarely a Rifa member on site, they will engage in a violent confrontation. Aztecas can also sometimes be seen flashing their gang signs. On the streets, they are either unarmed or armed with AM 1911 or a Uzi. They've also been seen carrying the Uzi on the streets along with an RPG, Tech 9, and katana during the citywide riots. They are actually better armed than their primary enemy, the Vagos, though the Vagos are much larger and have more territory. While the Aztecas are the smallest gang in Los Santos, suggesting that they are probably on equal power. Gal, Sonny, and Hazer are likely the gang's OGs who assist Cesar and CJ to recover some of their lost territory. Jose is also possibly an OG or high-ranking member, who was seen during the lowrider competition in the Aztecas territory. Nobody ever explains Cesar's status in the gang. He could be the leader or a high-ranking OG. It is more likely that he is a high-ranking member and not the leader due to his influence over Jose and his overall respect. If he was the leader, it is unlikely he would befriend CJ and ask for the Grove Street family's help during the citywide riots, and he wouldn't have dated Kindle either. Unlike the other gangs, the Aztecas don't primarily seem to be concerned with branching out or starting businesses or relationships, except for arms running and dealing like the Vagos and Bala's willingness to engage in the crack trade or the Grove family's willingness for territory or expansion. Instead, they seem to be more locally focused, by exclusively representing and defending their barrio. Interestingly, unlike the Balas and the families, the Aztecas are not divided into different sets. They are formed as one large gang instead. This is probably due to their small size. The different sets make it easier to organize large gangs, while the Aztecas wouldn't necessarily have that problem. Thanks for watching. Come back tomorrow to hear about another gang.